Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. And don't adjust your screens. Don't change the channel. Don't worry. This is real. The man of the hour, the man with the power. He is the hit maker and the record breaker. He's been all over the damn country, but we got him back in the hot seat finally. They call him Cueball Carmichael. I call him my good personal friend. Q, welcome home.
Thanks, Nick. It's good to be back in North Carolina and have a night in my own bed.
I can just imagine it. It's almost like you're still in a hotel, really, because you're not even used to your own bed yet.
Yeah, it's good. It takes a while. You get used to the hotel environment for a couple of weeks, and you come home, and there's really an adjustment period to sleep in your own bed. You just don't get in there and sleep good the first night. It just doesn't happen.
Never does.
No, never does, man.
But
I feel like I'm back in the wrestling game.
Exactly, and I can only imagine. I mean, you're getting the Lear jets and the limos and the beautiful hotels. I mean,
sure.
you're living the way you should be. You deserve to live that way, and you're a busy man, and we know that. So having you back here in the studio is it's wonderful for me. I know you're happy. I know our fans are going to be happy, but not exactly the most highest of highs for topics tonight. Of course, we are going to break it down for the people with the passing of what was a true Hall of Famer, Tracy Smothers RJ Meyers. You're going to break this down with everyone as the host, but not just the host, but one of the very close personal friends of Tracy's especially. We're going to talk about that, of course, and then we're going to scoot on over and we're going to talk about RJ. And, you told me a couple great stories today. So hopefully you've got your brainstorm India. You're going to remember some of them stories. They were great to tell. And, of course, you've got more than enough stories when it came to Tracy. We spoke briefly right before Tracy passed. I want to say we spoke the day before. To be honest, I think if I remember correctly, we were actually on this show, and you had said about giving everyone well wishes to Tracy, and of course he was in the battle for his life, and ultimately he lost that battle, but we can't let Tracy just ride off into the sunset just yet. We got to celebrate his life and.
He's not getting away. He's not getting away with it that easy.
Exactly, and he deserves it. He's a Hall of Famer, and he's somebody that made an impact, and he had a hand in a lot of guys. And we can talk about Steve Kern and Jerry Jarrett meeting him in the beginning, and him breaking in. But I'm gonna leave a lot of that up to you because you are so good when it comes to someone's career and the legacy that they bring. You are that journeyman. You've seen it firsthand. You've also been in the ring with Tracy firsthand. So why don't you break it down for me, kick us off, kind of give us maybe your first thoughts of meeting Tracy, what it was like for you.
I don't remember not knowing Tracy. I mean, our paths crossed early in both our careers for the first time in probably 1988 at, a big wrestling promotion in Virginia. Their Virginia Championship Wrestling, I believe it was. And it was run by a guy named David Lehigh. And I was there with Mark Fleming, who was the trainer at Lou Thesz's school, and he was wrestling under Hood that night. And that was the first night I met Tracy and talked with him. He found out I was a Lou disciple. And, of course, at that point, it was in this instant relationship because Tracy loved Lou Thez. And then in the mid-'90s, we were on a tour together. We had a guy who would book all of us together in a group, and there was Tracy and Buddy Landell and myself and Tom Brandy and Jimmy Cicero, just a steady group of guys that he would take and get booked everywhere. I'd like to say he was an agent for us, but it was a little different. He really wasn't. He was just a guy with a lot of money that wanted to hang out with wrestlers. So, at that time he was sort of a money mark, but he only ran one show a year in New York, in Royce Profit, and he packed it. I'm literally, we were at a show once, and Tracy was on the show too, and it was in New York City, and it was supposed to be in a gymnasium, or I'm sorry, it was supposed to be in a rec center. And what happened was a tree got hit by lightning about 2 hours before the show, fell into the building and crushed the roof, and ended up in this floor seating. So now this guy was so well connected in New York City that, hey, you know what I'm talking about? These guys, they had the money. These guys. So within an hour, we have a gymnasium at a school not more than a quarter mile away, and a ring and all the chairs are being moved over there, and the show started on time.
Wow.
Crazy. This happened around 4:35. By 7 o'clock, they were completely set up in the other building, and 7:30 doors open. The show started at 8 o'clock. And it had a young Steve Carino on there, a young Joey Mercury when he was Joey Matthews, Christian York, the Headbangers. Tracy was on the show. I think Buddy was on the show, and just was amazing. But Tracy and I got close. It was weird when he was in ECW. I went there for a while, and we got really close. But see, Buddy was the glue that held us together, Buddy Landell. Buddy Landell was great friends with both of us. So, Buddy would always make sure that somehow we ended up on the same show. And, Tracy was just one of those guys that, him and Buddy Landell were two of a kind. And those guys will always live in my heart forever. When Buddy died 5 years ago, this past June 21st, I got the call from Tracy, and I told the story, and Tracy says, "Hey, Q, are you at work?" And I said, "No, I'm home." He says, "You got family at home today, or are you alone?" I said, "No, I got family." And he goes, "All right." He goes, "Can you do me a favor, go somewhere quiet?" And I went out of the room. He goes, "Can you sit down?" And I sat down. I'm like, just not questioning what's going on, because I guess he just wants to talk to me about, problem with a promoter or one of the boys or something. And he says, "Look, man, I got some horrible news for you." He goes, "Buddy died today." I'm like, "Buddy who?" He's like, "Landell." I said, and I just remember. Just remember that it was the most devastating moment. Sorry. The most devastating moment of my life. Buddy and I were extremely close, as was Tracy. And we kind of looked at ourselves like three of the last cowboys, out there on the range. And not many of us left. And, when Tracy told me, I think I was in disbelief. I mean, it was so hard to imagine Buddy. He always looked great. He always, I was in a car with him once where he almost wrecked the car brushing his hair. He loved to brush his hair. He's driving with his knees and he's brushing his hair. And I'm like, "Brother, you might want to put your hands back on the wheel." And just as he looks up, somebody stopped and he just slammed on the brakes.
Oh.
And I'm like, "Jeez, man." And, Buddy always drove around in fancy cars, Porsches and Jags and stuff like that. He always did that. He would dress when he came to a show. He looked the part. He was a professional. And so, Tracy calls me a couple hours after it happens. And, Tracy and I had been talking for months and months and months and months, like probably once a week anyway. We had been talking over the years. We've talked back and forth on Facebook, and we called each other every 2 or 3 months to check in. But, it was weird. It was almost like, I told Tracy with what happened with Buddy. Buddy's daughter passed away. She was only 23, Colby.
Wow.
And once, she was had a stroke. She was in the hospital for 101 days, and Buddy never left her side. He had food brought to the hospital. He had clothes brought. He showered there. He never left her for 101 days. She laid in a coma, and he stayed there with her the entire time. And 10 minutes after she passed, he called me. And I had known her since she was a kid. was invited to her high school graduation. So it was tough. And, Buddy was such a man of faith that we prayed on the phone a lot. And Tracy and I would talk a lot. And I think Tracy and I knew once his daughter passed that for some reason it wouldn't be long, and it was about 3 months.
Wow.
So Tracy and I had talked about it, and we knew it was coming. But Tracy and I had got extremely close, I guess, in the last 20 years, and even closer in the last 5. And since Buddy passed, I mean, Tracy took Buddy's spot for me, and I took Buddy's spot for Tracy as far as somebody to talk to. So we had gotten very close, and by the grace of God, he called me from the hospital. He passed away on Tuesday, the 28th of October, and it was not that Sunday, the 26th. It was the week before. It was the 19th. I talked to him on Sunday for over an hour at the hospital. And a funny story, he's like, he has the aid committee. He goes, look, can you move this out of the way so I can do some yoga? True story. He goes, Q, I had to do some push-ups. I got to do some yoga. I got to do something, man. I'm just going crazy being in here. So there's Tracy, with a stage, basically stage 4 cancer disease, and didn't know how long he's gonna live, but he's still gonna do some yoga. So it was like, and I'm like, that's him, man. That's Tracy. I mean, him and Buddy were two of the most thoughtful human beings I ever met in my life. Just everything was about everybody else but them. And one time I asked both of them. I asked Buddy one time, I said, why do you think, I mean, you were a mega superstar in the rise in the 80s, self-destructed like a lot of guys did. And Buddy was honest about his addiction and his problems. And, there was a time when I picked up the phone and called Jim Cornette and said, look, go pick him up. Here's where he is. And he was a bad section of town doing things that weren't good for him. And Jim went and got him, got him out of there. And so it's one of those things where Tracy was just a guy who, everybody thinks when you see somebody with a career like Tracy's, I mean, he started in 82 in Continental. I broke in early 83. We came in about the same time. He went to the UWF after Continental. He was in Florida Championship Wrestling. I mean, he was in these great areas of wrestling very young in his career. And Buddy had the same thing. They were around great people early in their career. And those guys at that time, Buddy was kind of boisterous in the locker room. I always said I owned every locker room I went in, as long as it was my locker room. On the road sometimes too. But, when Tracy or Buddy was in there, of course, Buddy owned the locker room, and of course, I of course, conceded the locker room to him because he should be running the locker room. And I don't mean booking matches or doing anything else. I mean just being the guy in control, the alpha male.
You were the leader.
Yeah.
Leader of the locker room.
And look, I'm not going to argue him. We were all on a show one time in New Jersey. This has got to be 2009. Tracy, Buddy, a bunch of us were on a show. And Buddy hadn't met my wife Rhiannon yet, and he goes over to Carino and he goes, "Hey, who's the brunette with the big honkers?" And he goes, "That's Q's wife." So Buddy immediately goes, "Cueball, come here, I gotta talk to you. He takes me in the locker room. He says, "Look, man, I'm gonna tell you what happened before you hear from somebody else." So he told me what he said, and he said, "Man, if you want to take a shot at me, go ahead." I said, "Dude, what are you out of your mind?" I go, first off, it's a compliment, and look, that's just what we do,
Yeah, it's second nature.
I wanted to make sure we were cool. I said, "Brother, we're so much more than cool. It's not even funny." And so I went out and introduced my wife to him, and I said, "There's the girl with the big gazongers, She's
so
like, "What?"
Great, isn't it? Because normal people be like, "What? He said that? You didn't hit him?" But in the world of professional wrestling, that's like saying, "Hey, Q, I got a 50 sheet for you."
Yeah,
thanks
exactly.
for the compliment.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's the way it was. And so, but Tracy and I would always talk about guys. Our last conversation was about, it wasn't about Tracy ever. It was about guys that he felt should have made it. He's like, Matt Bowman, wise guy, Jimmy Cicero, man, he was a hell of a worker. He should have made it. He should have been a contract and been on top. He goes, Tom Brady should be world champion. Anywhere he goes, he should be world champion. And so we just talked about those journeyman guys that made it. Now, Tom did make it as Salvatore Sincere, and again, as Tom Brady. And Tom has my ultimate respect because he went in, he was working house shows where you're making, 25 days a month, you're making at least a couple grand a night, And Tom saved his money. Tom had no bad habits whatsoever, and he saved his money. And he had a bunch of tanning studios in the 90s and a bunch of businesses. And now he's a big executive at Comcast. So, Tom is one of those guys that we always said Tom had the golden touch. Anything he touched turned to money. Tom was a great businessman. Tom was the guy that would always say to me, Q, we're going to be in the main event, but look, I'm going to talk to the promoter into putting this on right before intermission. And so we'd have a great match, and, he'd have to go over big, crowd would pop, and he would go straight to his table and sell merch, right from the pin and cue ball in the middle of the ring. And he always said, I sold so much merchandise after I wrestled you, it was ridiculous, There was a night in Jersey that the heat was so bad for me getting in the ring. I went in the ring and then I powdered out before we even touched. The heat was so bad that the entire crowd got up and forced me out of the building as I'm backing up screaming, they're in front of my face, out of the building in New Jersey, out into the street where it was a benefit fireman that had passed away, right where the fire trucks were. And security had to stop. It took 15 minutes to get everybody back in their seats so I could come back in and get in the ring. Tom and I had a 10-minute match. I said, look, we had a 35-minute main event, man. Lasted 10 minutes.
Isn't that crazy?
But Tracy was that type of guy. Tracy was a lot like Buddy. He was willing to give his time and advice to young wrestlers. I posted the other day, the camp, the Buddy Landau Cup, we had a seminar, and we had 35, 40 people there. You see the pictures, and it said Tracy and Cueball Carmichael. Well, it was really Tracy. You know what I mean? I did one thing. I did a go behind the Luthez style, and I remember hooking the leg and turning the guy, and Tracy yells out. Everybody goes, what? And he's like, that's Luthez. That's Luthez. Cueball, show them that again. Let him learn. Let him learn. And Tracy was always like that. But, Tracy was one of those guys that the wrestling business was in every cell in his body. It was in every cell. He was the type of guy that would pull a kid to the side and say, look, man, when you do this, this is how you want to do it. Tracy in the main event would sit at the curtain and watch guys. And when they came back, he would take his time to go over and talk to them and explain what they did and what might have worked better for him. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to watch the first, second, third, fourth match. He's in the main event. He could have kicked back in the back of the locker room, just shot the crap out of the boys. But that wasn't Tracy. Tracy was the guy that was always trying to improve the business. He spent 100% of his time trying to make the business and people in the business better. And we would have long. There was never not a conversation with Tracy that wasn't an hour long. Yeah. It was just an hour. It was an hour the week before. Now imagine this. I'm getting on a plane Tuesday 28th. I have an opportunity to go for an interview for a company I spent 20 years with, and they're headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was talking to my buddy that I started with back in the 80s. He was my first guy I worked for in that business. Now he's the national sales manager. So we're just having a casual conversation on the 23rd or 4th of October. And he says, look, man, do you want to come be a national consultant for us? Now, in the position that I have with the company, the most coveted job in the world is what I have. Give you an idea, I worked the same position for a division that included 7 states and half of Canada. And I spent half my time in the late 80s and early 90s in Canada or in the northeastern United States doing what I do now. But, that was for a division, not for the factory. Now, this company, to explain a little bit, it's owned by Scott Fetzer, which owns 20 divisions. This is the biggest division. Scott Fetzer is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is owned by Warren Buffett. So indirectly, I'm working for Berkshire Hathaway or Warren Buffett. So I go out there. They say, look, we'll fly you out on the 28th for the day, fly you back, pay all your expenses. I'm like, okay. So they got a ticket waiting for me. I go to Wilmington. I fly out. I am just getting on my second plane. I fly from Cleveland to from Wilmington, North Carolina to Philly to Cleveland. I'm just about ready to get on the second plane. My phone rings. And I get the news that Tracy passed away. Now I'm going out to meet with the president of this company and the two executives for a job interview in a Ralph Lauren suit, $100 tie, $400 pair of shoes, just so I look good. And I'm going for this interview on what has now become one of the worst days of my entire life. And I looked up and I said, look, Tracy, I know you're going to be in there with me, and I know you're going to help me get this job. And they interviewed a lot of people for this job. And I was interviewed. I'm sitting with the president of the company. I'm sitting with the national sales manager, who's my friend, but I've never met this president before. I knew the past 3 presidents, but not this guy. I've been out of this business for 10 years. So I get the call, not advocating drinking a beer on a show, but hey, I'm human.
Hashtag drink a beer.
Well, this show, I said to my wife, I said, I don't drink very much at all. I said, look, I'm gonna have to drink a beer for the show and probably a couple afterwards because it's a rough show for me.
I know it is, man.
So I just look up and I say, I know you're with me, man. I know you're with me. And I said, I know if you're with me, brother, there's no way I can't win. When you're with me, Tracy Smothers, there's no way. That's right. The shirt was a gift at the Buddy Landau Memorial Cup for Tracy Smothers. And it's one of those things that says, if I hear Tracy sucks one more time, everybody dies. Now you can't say that these days, but Tracy didn't worry about being politically correct. You know what I mean? He was working his heel when he had these made. It's a great shirt. I'll wear it around the house, but I won't wear it out in the garage or anywhere where it might get hooked or snagged or whatever.
Right.
And he's got a cue ball shirt and somewhere probably. And it was just one of those things where he was I don't remember when I didn't know him. That's how long I've known him. I don't remember when we didn't talk on the phone for hours at a time, So I knew he was with me, and I ended up getting the job, and it's a lot of travel, but it's incredibly lucrative. I'm very blessed to have this opportunity that fell out of the sky. And the week before, my wife and I were talking about that exact business and how long I did it, and how good it was to me. And I get the call it's out of nowhere, and big change. But anyway, so Tracy was, Tracy worked in a lot of spots, man. I'm telling you, Florida Championship Wrestling back then was incredible. Continental, he was in and out Continental for 6 years. USWA, Jerry Lawler's group.
Smoky Mountain.
WCW from 90 to 92. Tracy was like a Brad Armstrong. All the talent in the world, but the promotions just didn't know how to use these guys. You know what I mean? There's an endless list of guys that were talented, that had charisma, that could get on the mic and be good, but the promotions just never figured out how to maximize that person's potential. And that's one of the things I always thought is, like, if you got a guy like that, why don't you go sit down with that guy, have dinner, have a few drinks, right? Talk to him for 3 or 4 hours one-on-one, and you'll find something in your head will pop.
Oh, yes.
And find a place for him and a spot for him, but no executive wants to do it. They want to look at the guy on paper and say, well, let's do this with him. You don't even know the guy. Look, some of the greatest guys in wrestling, when Vince brought in like the Bushwhackers, who were the sheep herders, who were the most violent tag team, probably, with the exception maybe some guys in ECW, the most violent tag team in the world at the time.
They had some bloodbaths.
They had some bloodbaths. I mean, look, I've wrestled the Bushwhackers a dozen times, and I can tell you one thing. They got plenty of scar tissue on their heads, man. I mean,
brother, you ain't kidding.
It's unbelievable. You don't even want to hit them too hard because you're afraid you're going to pop them open, you know? It's funny. I forget what Luke hit me with, maybe an elbow, and Butch dropped a fist and busted my eye open in a ring in a glass festival. And he's like, he sets me up in a chin lock. He goes, "All right, Mike, it's good for the business."
Good for the business.
Good for the business, he said.
I was going to reach out to Luke just the other day. I'm going to do that this week.
Yeah, talk to him. Tell him, Cueball and Cicero. And I'll never forget, it was a glass festival outside. There was like 7,000 people there, man. It was just packed. and Butch said to me, he said, "Look, don't lock up till the heat dies." Literally, we were all sunburned. Because it was like a 90-degree day, and we just got sunburned. So, it was crazy. But, Tracy was just one of those guys that, man, he's hard to describe. He was like Buddy. Buddy was never about Buddy. Buddy never talked about himself, ever. And neither did Tracy. They talked about the business, and they talked about guys that should have made it. And they talked to young wrestlers about their matches. And, those guys made the business better. They really did. And so, Tracy's all over. He wrestled in Japan. He wrestled all over the world.
A lot of people don't know that, his time over in Japan, he was a former tag team champion with Cactus Jack, which may throw a lot of people off. I mean, there are certain people, and the same with the Mid-South NWA, doing it with help me out, please. He was the heavyweight champion. So there's a lot of companies or a lot of people that don't realize he held gold in a lot of places like Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He was their heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a journeyman, but he was a man's man. And he also held a tag belt with Little Guido.
Yes.
So, just to name a few, I mean, and people don't realize that he really had a career. Like, he spent a 30-year career, and he's a bona fide Hall of Famer in every sense of the word.
Look, and he spent 30 years busy. I remember him telling me, like we were on the road in, like, I think 97, 96, 97, and that's when I got close to Tracy because it was on every show. We wrestled 100. I wrestled 154 times in 1998. Now, people, that's not much. Guys are on the road. You got to understand, most of our travel that time was by car. So it's a day between shows. So it's a full day's drive between a lot of those shows. When you wrestle Friday night in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and you drive to Pittsburgh, you're driving 500 miles, 600 miles, 13 hours. And then you go straight from Pittsburgh to a Sunday afternoon show in Kingsport, Tennessee, which is 400 miles the other direction, and that was the business. And then go do maybe a fill-in shot for the WWE on Monday and Tuesday. We were wrestling constantly, and that's, Tracy and I had a conversation before too about guys that didn't travel, and he didn't think a lot of guys that didn't travel because he thought they were part-timers in the business, and it's not a part-time business. He goes, "Q, people don't know what it's like to be on the road 150, 175 nights a year." He goes, "Especially back when we were all driving by car." I said, "Yeah, I don't have any idea. They really don't, And that's when you had 4 guys jump in a car, and it was a roving classroom.
Yeah, you look like a pack of sardines.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look,
I mean,
there's many times in my Honda Accord that I had Big Slam, who passed away 5 months ago, Walt McDonald, Big Slam in the front seat, Jimmy Cicero and Julio De Niro in the back seat, and driving. And I had a bigger Honda Accord, it was a 93 or 4 or something like that. I bought it brand new. So it was a little bit bigger. And then I got an SUV, which was great. But I told everybody, look, I put 250,000 miles on that Honda Accord in 4 years, and I only drove half the time. The other half the time we rode with Julio. So it was one of those things where Julio De Niro, Jimmy Cicero, and I lived all within 30 minutes of each other, and also in the other areas where we trained Joey Matthews or Joey Mercury and Christian York. So it was a roving classroom. Steve Carino lived in Philly, which is only 4 hours from us. And, Tom Brandy lived up there. And we would go up to Tom's. Me and Cicero would go up to Tom's. And Carino, me, Cicero, and Brandy. And Julio would go up to WWE to get us booked for, a couple of shots. And, it was just constant travel. And Tracy was always in that mix. When we did the tours, the Royce Profit tours, 97, 98, 99, 2000, I mean, it was always, I can tell you the crew. It was Missy Hyatt, the Walking Riot. There was Scott Putski. There was Buddy Landell. There was Tracy Smothers. There was Tom Brandy. Right there, you've got 5 people that can headline anywhere in the world. You've got myself, because they needed somebody to carry their bags. You've got
so hard on yourself.
I know. You can't laugh at yourself. You can't laugh at anybody else.
That's right, man.
So, wise guy Jimmy Cicero, who should have had a contract in '97. Ivan Koloff trained him, phenomenal wrestler. There was Steve Carino. Later on, there was Joey Mercury and Christian York. Trying to think, that probably is the conglomerate. Malaya Hosaka and Debbie Combs. And I toured with Debbie Combs, Malaya Hosaka, and Bob Starr was doing Doink. And it was Malaya and Doink against me and Debbie in a mixed tags match. And every time we started, it was a silly string in the face, back up, cell powder. Debbie Combs, the most beautiful girl in the world, and Malaya Hosaka would throw me in the corner and grab me and kiss me. And I would act like I drank poison, and just, I mean, look, but Doink got on his hands and knees behind me, right? And I didn't see him. Malaya Hosaka comes off the top. I catch her in a high cross body, take 2 steps back because I caught her, fall over him, and 1, 2, 3. And the crowd goes crazy. Just stupid stuff like that. But, Tracy was on that tour, and it was so much fun. It went on for 3 years, and it was, 30 weekends out of the year. And we just got close, and when Buddy passed, we got, even closer. So, I mean, it was one of those things that was just crazy. And to move on a little bit, I want to talk about another friend of mine that passed away yesterday. Maybe we can take a break first.
Let's do it. Sit tight, guys. We're going to roll with some credits, but we're coming back with more of Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles.
Fuck, I didn't think I was going to break down, man. That was hard.
here on Turnbuckles, Trunks, and Titles. I'm Nick. Of course, this is the Triple T Radio Network. But the guy beside me, although he is wearing one of them Tracy Smothers socks, terrible. But he was one hell of an athlete.
One more time, everybody dies.
Okay, I won't say it again. I apologize, sir. But I'll tell you, to the late, great Tracy Smothers, we all say thank you. And Q, I know what he meant to you. I can hear it in your voice. I can feel in my heart. So,
you know, the last time we talked, he said, he goes, look, I want to see Buddy, but I'm not ready right now. I beat Buddy Landau. I said, I know. I said, but look, man, do me a favor. If you get there before me, I fully expect you and Buddy to set on the second rope and hold up the top rope for me to come in.
Perfect.
You got it, brother. You got it, brother. I tell you, you know, with the past year, just the past year alone, there's a hell of a battle royal going on up in heaven.
Ooh, brother, wow. You ain't kidding.
Wow.
We're talking the best of the best are up there waiting.
So I wanted to switch gears and I wanted to talk about a local icon. You know, I was blessed that a guy named Dan McDivitt, who was a booker at MEWF, Mid-Eastern Wrestling Federation, which was owned by Dennis Whipwreck, in the early 90s, started booking me. And I would book some of their guys. And it was a quid pro quo type situation, you know. And I wasn't great at that time. You know, I had been one of those guys who was in, out, and around the business, went and got some great training from, you know, Peter Maivia's school, attacked the wrestling business, sort of got lost in it, and I wasn't happy. Went and spent, you know, 8 months, 10 months with the great Lou Thez, whatever April to October is, with Lou Thez, and got remotivated and went out there and started working hard at it. And, you know, it was one of those things where they gave me a shot at MEWF, and they packed a bingo hall on Friday nights. A lot of the ECW guys were there. Axel Rotten was there and was part of the booking team because psychologically he was brilliant. Tom Brandy was there. So I got to work there and eventually morphed into just Dan McDevitt's promotion, him and Mark Schrader, called MCW, Maryland Championship Wrestling. And it's still iconic to this day. It's been running for about 20 years, more than 20 years, maybe 22. And in Maryland, it wasn't uncommon for them to draw 1,800 people on a Tuesday or a Thursday night. They ran the Patapsco Arena. They ran the Union Hall. And I got an opportunity to go to Bonebreaker School, work on their ring, and help them with that one time. And I met this kid named RJ. And I looked at him. He's a big kid. So I started talking to him and found out that he had a great amateur background, state champion in wrestling, just a big guy. If you look at TQM versus the Road Warriors, you can see him in there. He teams with the Road Warriors in that one, the blonde-haired kid. Just a super talent, but a nice kid. And so I got to break him in a little bit. You know, I was probably his first 10 matches, 3 or 4 were against me. He knew I'd take care of him and try to bring him along as best I could. And, you know, it ended up morphing to the point where one night at Patapsco Arena, there's 1,700 people there. And I'm going to get this video from his wife. I'll tell you the story behind that, Tara. And Tara, if you're listening to this, you know how much RJ meant to me. And you know, talking to you last night, chatting with you last night was it was difficult, but you're a classy lady that would take the time and talk to me on what's probably just the worst day of your life. And, you know, you and your kids are in my heart, my prayers, and RJ's family. And you know that I will do anything I can to help you. So, anyway, so about a year and a half ago, I get the notice from his wife that RJ is well, let me go back to the story. First, the story is at Patapsco Arena. So we set this thing up where Bundy snuck in the building. Nobody saw King Kong Bundy in the building. So it starts out with me against the Bruiser. Now, this building probably seats 1,500, and I'm not kidding you when I say there was over 1,700 people in there, and it was like a Thursday night. It was packed. So I out there wrestling him. And Mad Dog O'Malley, who there's a match with me and him on YouTube, but actually he was kind of like my lackey. But, you know, Mad Dog is 6'4", 460 pounds. He moves really good. He's a big dude. So I'm wrestling RJ, and Bunyan came in. He said, Q, look, I'm tired. You put the match together. So I said, all right, here's where we'll start. We won't even bring you out in the beginning. I'll start wrestling with RJ, and Mad Dog will grab his leg a couple times. And I told RJ, get on the mic and say, look, I'm a badass, and I can kick your ass or your ass, but I can't kick both your asses at the same time. You know it. So I'm going to go in the back and find somebody to tag with me. So he goes in the back, and he comes out with Bundy. Now, this is like 97, 98. Bundy's huge. He's a 2 WrestleMania star. He comes out, and the crowd goes bananas. I mean, they're crazy. It's King Kong Bundy. They didn't know he was there. He wasn't booked. He wasn't on the poster. Nobody knew. He comes out. He's going to tag with RJ. Well, the whole gimmick is I'm afraid of Bundy, right? So I get in the ring with RJ to start the match, and I stretch on the ropes, and he turns around, and Bundy comes in. I turn around, I'll go to Bundy, I fall my butt back up, go to the corner. No. So I wouldn't go in while Bundy was in. So, and this makes the finish even better, right? So we work the match. And Mad Dog gets in there with Bundy. I won't go in with him. I'm only in there with RJ. So at the end of the match, I had my green singlet on, and I pulled it off the shoulders like I'm ready to fire up, right? So RJ ends up, I shoot him in, I duck, he goes for a sunset flip, and we set this up ahead of time. I had bought a pair of boxers that were green with 8 balls all over them. So he pulls down my singlet to my knees, and I'm in boxers with 8 balls on them. The crowd goes berserk at this point. They're just laughing. I mean, I never heard 1,700 people all laugh so much at once. So I cover my privates, and I to the corner, and just as I go to the corner, he had tagged Bundy. And the timing, the most perfect timing I've ever had in a match. I turn around, Bundy freight trains me. I flop in the middle, hits me with a big splash, gets the 5 count. They're all cheering. Mad Dog comes in. He's trying to pull up my singlet to get it over my underwear so I'm not so embarrassed, man. And they go back to laugh, and there's a 500-pound guy trying to pull my singlet up. I'm out cold from getting squashed, right?
Yeah.
And these guys are just in the corner pointing and laughing. And 1,700 people are laughing at me. I mean, it was, let me put it this way. The next match out was the main event. It was 2 different current television world tag team champions against each other in a tag match. We're in the back, and Bundy just looks up at me, and he goes, he always called, Bundy and I, both our first names is Chris, right? Chris Pally's Chris Jackson. So he always called me Chrissy. If any other guy had called me Chrissy, I would have knocked him out, right? But Bundy can call me anything he wants.
That's right.
His personal relationship and mine, going to New Year's parties together, being on the road together, watching, UFC together, hanging out at each other's houses, or hanging out at the bars between each other's houses. Every Tuesday night Monday night we met at the same bar for 3.5 years because he's from that town, so he's not a big deal to people, and we could go in there in anonymity, And every Monday night we went out together for 2.5 years. So anyway, back to the story. RJ is at that point just super excited, and he comes back to the locker room and he goes, Q, I signed my first autograph. I said, kid, you better get used to it because it's going to happen a lot. And fast forward through the last 20 years, he's been the MCW heavyweight champion 10 times. This belt has been around for 22 years. This promotion has been around for 22, 23 years. They've had TV in the local Baltimore market. It's so well exposed. This is a true story. I go out to Cleveland, Fairlawn, Ohio, to work last week. I walk into an office. The guy that works there says, I'm from Baltimore. I know who you are. I'm like, what? He goes, aren't you Cueball? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, my God, I've seen you wrestle at North Carroll High School. I've seen you wrestle at the Papsco Arena. What's the chances that I'm going to go out there. And he goes, I watched you as a kid. Now he's an adult with a beard. I watched you as a kid. I said, thanks. Appreciate that. Date me like that. And he goes, no, I went to every MCW match. And he goes, I remember you. He goes, you were. And I'm like, holy shit. So the national sales manager I started working with in 1981 at the company. So he calls me Q. So I'm working for this major company where I signed a 27-page document about the Foreign Corruption Policy Act, about political donations, about everything from sexual harassment to where I put my money. So the company is relieved of any responsibility if I go out there and become a terrorist, basically. So what are the odds I'm going to walk in there and a guy's going to know me? And of course he knew. He saw the Bruiser match with the Road Warriors. He was at that one. And so, it was just kind of one of those things where the other day I get a message that Tara said that the Bruiser's leukemia had come back a couple times, and this time it was so bad that they basically sent him home so he could go peacefully at home, surrounded by friends and family. And yeah, he passed away yesterday morning. And 44 years old, 3 kids, great wife, who used to be our manager for TQM, as a matter of fact. This guy had over 20 years had accumulated, thousands and thousands of fans. MCW, Maryland Championship Wrestling, is a big deal. I mean, it's not an independent promotion at all. It's nothing like that. It's the polar opposite. I mean, the Headbangers came through there. I met Eddie Guerrero there when he wrestled there. The Road Warriors have wrestled there. Anybody who's anybody as a star in wrestling, from King Kong Bundy to the Headbangers to Eddie Guerrero, the list goes on, has wrestled for Maryland Championship Wrestling, George Animal Steel. I mean, just Terry Funk. I mean, just a massive amount of talent. The promotion's very successful, paid very well, and RJ had become very good friends. And yesterday when I found out he passed, I posted something, and he has a group, Bruiser Strong, for his friends and buddies and stuff. And, I posted something in there, and, it's just, it's hard when you're watching guys that you wrestled with dozens of times, that you traveled, thousands of miles with, that you've seen every weekend for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And, they just, I mean, it's hard when they pass away. I mean, it's very difficult. I sometimes look and wonder, hey, well, I realize I have more work to do or I wouldn't be here. But, we all pushed the envelope in a certain way to a certain degree back in the day. But, it's just, it's been a bad year. Animal, who I wrestled, Walt McDonald, a very, very close personal friend of mine, like Tracy RJ, passed away 5 or 6 months ago. I mean, it's just been a year. 2020 has been one of those years where you don't ever want to wish your life away, but you really can't wait for 2020 to end.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to be a year that's written about in history. This is going to be one of those years that makes history for forever, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 years, right? They're going to talk about the COVID and the politics and I don't want to get into anything political, but they're going to talk about this. But in wrestling, we're going to talk about it as the year that we lost some of the greatest alumnus in the history of the business. I mean, it's just one of those times where, and RJ, for all intents and purposes, RJ was a family man and a hard worker. But RJ would have had the opportunity to sign with the WWE if he wanted to. They would have taken him in a minute. I mean, a lot of Dan's guys went there from Bone Breakers. But RJ was the type of guy that would rather stay, work a regular job and raise his kids and his family. He was that type of guy. I'm very proud of him, how he developed as a wrestler. But as I told his wife, I'm even more proud how he developed as a father and a husband and a human being. And just another guy, who, I mean, RJ could have torn your arm off and beat you to death with it. That was an incredible badass. I mean, seriously, he was strong, great great amateur background, just tough guy, but one of those guys that never did it. I mean, he went out and did his job with a smile on his face. And, just, if any of my buddies, Bobby Starr, Dwayne Gill, Ramblin' Rich Myers, his wife Karen, I mean, Tara, if you get to see this, know that my heart bleeds for every person in you. Because the thing about RJ, and this is what I said, is he's a guy who made a difference in the business. He made a difference in my life. I remember the autograph thing. I remember that telling him to get used to it. He made a difference in young wrestlers' life. He took so many young wrestlers under his wing out of Bone Breakers Wrestling School and Maryland Championship Wrestling and taught them the business. And, I was very proud of him, because that was my job when I was there with him. Is I was the guy who had, many championships on the road, but I would come into MCW and I would gracefully put over any of their guys. And I had my time in the sun as the tag team champion in Maryland Championship Wrestling when they were probably at their peak. And, averaged 2,000 people at a show and had television throughout the Tri-County area there in Baltimore. I mean, just incredible guys. And, I'm grateful that Danny McDevitt booked me. I'm grateful that I got to work with so many superstars up there. And I'm especially grateful that I got to meet RJ Meyer, a.k.a. the Bruiser, and his wife, who managed DQM, and just great people. And, it's been a very difficult couple of weeks, been a very difficult year. And I typically don't get emotional on our show. I'm able to disconnect. But tonight was just very difficult to disconnect from the two people that we talked about. Very hard, very fresh, very difficult. And, as you can see, I'm sporting the Tracy Smothers shirt even as we speak. It'll come off and go back in the drawer, but hey, here's to you, Tracy, and here's to you, RJ, Big Slam, Animal, all the guys that we've lost this year. We know you're up there in heaven. We know you're up there having a hell of a match. And I'm going to take my time, but I'll eventually get there.
Yes, take your time, please. No rush. Trying to leave this night on a high note.
Let's do it.
We're going to try to get some bonus content in for you guys over the next week. Maybe a little special hour show talking to Q about some big things in wrestling. Maybe a watch a match or two, let Q kind of pick it apart.
Be great.
Trying to get Q fired up, have a little bit of fun with him, of course. As you guys know, Thursday, regular time, Truth Busters back here. So the content's coming. We're trying to get it out. Q's home for a couple of weeks. Right. So
yeah, we're going to get a bunch of content done. And listen, thanks to everybody for watching tonight. Apologize for getting emotional, but it's very difficult, when you know these guys so well.
Apologize for that,
look, this is Cueball Carmichael for Nick London, for Turnbuckles, Trunks and Titles, Triple T Radio, baby. Listen, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. We'll be back every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Atlantic Time, 3 o'clock, whatever Pacific Time, whatever Mountain Time. We're going to deliver great content, positive wrestling stuff. Tonight was not a sad show. It was a celebration of the life of two incredible professional wrestlers that I was attached to emotionally. That's right. They're up there in heaven right now. They're looking down. Tracy, thanks for getting me the job. I appreciate you being with me that day, as you are every day. Tell Buddy to watch himself up there, because I know him. And look, thanks for watching Triple T Radio. It's an honor to be able to do it, deliver it to you guys. We just appreciate you so much. And with that said, please join us Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, for Truth Busters with Jon Stewart. We're going to cover the election. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week, same time.
What are you guys covering?